Cared Sober Witch, and you are listening to the Sober Witch Life podcast. So, welcome back to another incredible episode. We have officially, I don't know if I said this the last week, but I literally have guests lined up for like every week, and I'm so honored and floored every single time I get to talk to a new beautiful soul and have them talk about their recovery journey. And today is not an exception. Today is like part of that. So I would love to welcome to the floor, the beautiful thing is many of these folks, just like this lovely individual today, is I just get to know. So it's like I get to like kind of sit and have a conversation with someone and, poke their little brains on who they are. And so I would just love to welcome to the floor, Jen Rodriguez. Why don't you, tell us, just give us that like introduction of, who are you today? I don't know why I'm being told it, like, who are you today?
Because I'm a Gemini and it changes day to day.
There we go. I was like, this is interesting. They're like literally saying today in my head. So
Yeah,
yeah,
no,
well,
that sounds accurate. Yeah, I'm Jen. I am a psychic medium. I'm also like my day job. I work at a law firm, and we were just talking about like the polarity of that. Just how crazy it is. I have my work persona and then me, and I'm a psychic medium. I own Soulful Existence. Sorry, I'm knocking over my desk. I own Soulful Existence, where I do one-on-one tarot card readings and mediumship and past life regression with clients all over the world. I also host my own podcast, Fate 40 and Beyond. And my little tagline is where midlife gets honest. So I am geared towards women who are 40-ish. And we talk about all the things. It gets really real, real quick. But I start that with a tarot card reading, and we just let the cards kind of tell us where the conversation unfolds. So it's
I
really
love that.
interesting. And then most recently, I am in the middle of launching an astrology app called the Cosmic Brief, and that's, I don't know, that kind of started as a passion project for myself and took off into like a whole thing. So now I have over 50 users who are trialing it while it's in like waitlist mode, and it launches fully on June 14th. So that's going to be interesting. But
I
I
know it
get so
takes a
much
lot of
good
work.
feedback. Yeah, it's so much work. And every time I get positive feedback, it's been so worth it. So the goal is really just to help people understand what the current astrology means for them personally.
Cool.
So yeah, it's
I
really
love
interesting.
that. I love that. And I'm gonna call you out on this. That's a lot of what you do. And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna spend some time now talking about who you are and what makes you up, right?
Yeah.
Sober Witch Life, Jen, is, my goal here is to share stories of folks that are in recovery. And that recovery can really be around anything. For me, I'm a recovering alcoholic, workaholic, perfectionist,
Mhm.
control freak, recovering from childhood, trauma, all sorts of things, and
Yeah.
abusive marriage, all sorts of things. But tell me a little bit about, when you look back and, you know, wherever your journey has kind of like stepped into, where you would claim that term of recovery.
So that's interesting. When I do attend meetings, and when I go to meetings, I say, "Hi, I'm Jen. I'm in recovery." Because as far as I'm concerned, I'm in recovery from all the things. Yeah, drinking was probably my drug of choice for
Mm-hmm.
many years. I dabbled in other stuff, but that didn't really have a hold on me. But then again, I've also been addicted to bad relationships, whatever that looked like. Food issues are a big deal for me. There's a lot there. Shopping, it's
Yeah.
easy to it's easy to overdo it in anything for me. So being of sound mind from letting any of that stuff take over is what recovery is for me.
Yeah, I love that. When you look back, right? Because I think all of us, when we're on this side of the recovery journey, it's, we have a much different perspective, much different perspective. So when you look back at the Jen that was in active addiction, right? That was still using, your drug of choice or behavior of choice or belief of choice, let's be
Yeah.
real. Um, how did it shape who you thought you were at that point?
I think the biggest difference, like for me, it's really just like my self-worth, what I
Mm,
thought I was capable of. I didn't think I was capable of anything. Like not to get too deep too fast, but like it led me to a point where I didn't think I needed to be in the world anymore, you
mm,
know? I didn't see what value I had here. And now, like the complete opposite is like I'm just constantly creating and putting things out into the world, and whether or not like it's my worth, like I have value in that creation process. And so, yeah, my active addiction was just such a low point for my self-worth and my capabilities. Like my I've heard people say like it kept me away from my purpose and my um the words escaping me right now, but potential.
mm.
Potential is the word that I hear a lot of people use, and that's what I relate to most. Like I did not know what my potential was.
You know, I hear that worthiness thing
Oh yeah.
so often with folks. Um, you know, I'm curious, like again, if you look back, do you know what some of those things were that created that false narrative for you?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, yeah. I remember, growing up and just I think I've always been someone who enjoyed being creative and pretty much being told it needs to fit in this box if it's going to
Mm,
be good. It's
mm,
if it doesn't, or if it doesn't look a certain way, if it doesn't sound a certain way, if it does, then it's not good enough. And
mm,
that it's hard, like in the last year, well, 6 months even, I was going to therapy to talk about a lot of this stuff because even in recovery and finding my self-worth as a mother or as a partner or as like all of that stuff, okay, that's fine. But when it came to like the things I wanted to create and do and be, I still held back a lot. And it was because of a lot of those experiences growing up that I just didn't think I had what it took to stand in the spotlight or even just speak my voice and be out there. So it's been an interesting journey for sure.
no, it's like it makes me think about, you brought it up from the creative aspect, and, I also think about it just society in general, right? If we go back to childhood, I don't know, I don't have kids right now, so but I do know kids are still grade, you're still given a grade,
Yeah,
right? And so here we're just like taught throughout life that there is some kind of arbitrary, let's be real, most of this stuff is arbitrary,
right,
right? Standard of what is a C or a B or an A.
right,
And yet no one anywhere starts to question why that even matters.
right. Yeah, 100%.
Why that even matters. Um, you know, when you and I love that you're talking about like still in recovery now, like doing the work, because I agree. I don't think it ever. I think that's the beautiful thing about being on the other side of recovery is you become much more aware and conscious of the things that still kind of need work.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
but going back to that time of like transition, right? So those of us that are leaving a substance behind, right? That becomes like a really big deal. This time in, and
Mhm.
some of they say like rock bottom is sometimes what
Right.
people will reach. What was this facing like? And I'd love for you to even like, do you even have a spiritual perspective? Like, what was this facing of that addiction and that transition like for you?
It's weird for me because I hear so many people talking about rock bottom in their own journey, and I don't know that I really had a rock bottom. Mine doesn't look like a lot of people. I didn't go to rehab. I didn't get arrested. I didn't lose jobs. I still had my own house and car and, like all of these things. And so it's been really hard to pinpoint what exactly it was. Essentially, what I have narrowed it down to, I got so fed up with myself. Like,
Mm.
I hated being around me. I did not want to be around myself. And I realized that there was something that had to change. And the alcohol was like the easiest thing to get rid of. That it was just, I got so fed up with my own excuses and the excuses that I would just repeat to myself like mantras, and it just was so like I got irritated and annoyed with that. And so it was just all of a sudden one day I woke up and I went, wait, this isn't serving me anymore. This is not who I want to be. And ultimately, what it did come down to, I do a lot of like inner child work. So if that comes up a lot, that's why. But I remember looking in the mirror drunk one night and going, oh my God, 5-year-old me would be so disgusted right now. Like she does not recognize who I am. And I think ultimately that's what made that shift for me and made me realize like I need to change something, and if I want to change anything, this is going to be the thing that has to go first.
Mm.
And that
Mm.
was I really did. I woke up one day and I was hungover, and I remember talking to a friend on the way to work, and I just said, I can't keep doing this. I'm going to stop drinking. And they were like, whoa, okay, like good for you. And I reached out to a couple of people who I had met previously, just like in social circles, and they had explained at some point that they don't drink. And I said, okay, what do I do? Like, how do I fix this? What's the first step? And they said, okay, stay sober today. Like, just don't do it again. And which was fine because I remember feeling it was like a 2 or 3 day hangover that time. And they said, we have a meeting on this day. Come join me. And that was it. Like, so it wasn't the rock bottom that so many people think of.
Mm.
And that caused a little bit of imposter syndrome early in my recovery. Am I really an alcoholic if I didn't get arrested? Am I really, just all of these questioning things. And every now and then I still have that. I'm 8 years in on this journey,
Yeah.
and it still happens. And I'm like, maybe I'm not really that much of an alcoholic. It's like these justifications.
I don't know what the saying is, right? But there is a saying in like around the tables that goes like, it'll just keep getting worse if you keep, right? Like,
Oh, yeah.
so yeah, it'll just keep getting worse. But I love that you brought that up because I do think, and I love your perspective on this. I think alcoholism, and I'm going to use alcoholism rather than just
Sure.
drug addiction because I do think drug addiction has a very different societal perspective to
Right.
it. There's a lot more shame where drinking has a lot more acceptance.
Sure.
But as women, I
Hmm.
don't think women who are alcoholics hit the rock bottom in the way that is often described and people think about.
That's a really good point. Yeah.
Right? We in and ourselves, let's just paint this picture here, Jen. Like, guess what? Most of us are probably taking care of the house,
Hmm.
still drinking. We're
Hmm.
probably taking care of whatever business, still drinking.
Yeah.
We're probably still showing up to whatever we need to for our family and our kids, still drinking,
Yeah.
right? And so we become this just very performative, high functioning, you know,
Right.
alcoholic, and will like our type A-ness, right,
Right.
won't allow ourselves to put ourselves into the position. And so it's like what it sounds like for you, and I'm curious, like I said, your perspective. It sounds like your quote unquote rock bottom was like a dark night of the soul.
Which is interesting because and I think we can go through multiple Dark Night of the Souls.
Mm-hmm.
I had already previously done something like that. Like I had already gone through this whole awakening. And what's really interesting is at the time of my decision to get sober, I was already starting to. I grew up in a very traditional religion. And so And by that I mean like the outwardly Christian belief system. And so I had already gone through this discovery of a more spiritual side of myself. I had already started to tap into that. And I remember thinking like, oh, if I drink more, I'll connect more with,
Mhm.
my spiritual self. I'll read better tarot card readings. I'll be able to, like it was just such a looking back now, that was more self-destructive, trying to lean into that side. And I think it does happen for a lot of pagan communities where alcohol is almost leaned upon in order to connect. And I have found such the opposite for me,
Mhm.
that the more sober I get, I don't know if it's possible to be more sober, but the more I go down this path of my own sobriety and recovery, the more I get in touch with my higher power, whatever that looks like for today, because it does change day to day. It does. It's flows. It's an ebb and flow for what that higher power looks like. So yeah, and then I think especially like as you're talking about like for women, we get the whole mommy wine culture too.
Mm.
And that drives me nuts these days. Like there's I don't I looking back should not have relied so heavily on a drink to help me unwind from having kids at the end of the day. Like, sure, kids are a lot, but that was not the right way to handle motherhood stress. Just,
Well,
and that's crazy to me now.
my partner and I are both in recovery, so we have a lot of conversations. And then, the more you're in kind of a circle of sober folks, I think the conversations come up. But you look at all of these situations, all of these events, all of these activities that are out there, and they associate drinking, like
Oh, yeah.
wine with yoga, wine with this, paint
Right.
and sip. All of these things are associated because drinking in and of itself is so normalized, and I would even say celebrated,
Oh, for sure.
right? Celebrated. But I've had this, I love that you brought up from the pagan community, because I do think, and I've had just doing the work that I'm doing, I've had lots of conversations where it becomes a very uncomfortable situation where people feel ostracized from their local communities
Yeah.
because they don't accept, or understand like sobriety or the need for like a safe space.
Right.
So, I'm curious, because you brought up the pagan, like where trying to unpack where do you think that false narrative came up that the drinking was going to make you more connected or the drinking was going to, accentuate your spirituality? Can you like pinpoint or see like where this kind of narrative?
I think it goes back to like all of the mass produced advertising of alcohol in the first place. We're
Mm,
told it'll connect us with people. We'll be better friends. You have fun. You're the life of the party when you drink. And they have beer commercials on the beach and everyone's laughing and joking around, and I think it stems from that. I think I just carried over into something I could understand at the time.
mm,
This idea of if I continue, if I drink before I do this thing, then it means I'm part of the group. And I do remember going to a few pagan type events prior to getting sober and thinking, "Oh God, good. They drink here. They get it." You know? Like, but of course, not everyone does. And then you get like the whole and it could be totally stereotypical, but like the whole pagan debauchery connection, like
yeah.
for all these heathens who love to live life so far out on the edge, and that's not what I found. Now I have found a complete opposite version of that in the pagan communities that I frequent, and it's just so interesting to see like the amount of people who are in pagan communities who are deciding that it's just not for them anymore. The drinking
Mm-hmm.
just isn't serving them. And I love it because I hear the same thing over and over, like now that that's removed, they can have a better connection, not only with their higher power, whatever that looks like, but with the people who have the same belief systems or similar belief systems as them. And that's like one of my favorite things to pull out when I'm talking about addiction is just how community is the opposite of addiction. There's tons of research on this, that having the community and the connection is ultimately like the antidote, I guess,
Hmm.
to addiction. And so like when we have those communities now who are more focused on being sober, I mean, I love what you do. I follow everything you do on Facebook,
Hmm.
and bringing those people together. It's still a new concept, I think, though, especially on this
I
this end of the
it
world.
is it is absolutely a new concept, and it's like I get this picture in my head, and you're talking about, all of the commercials and all of like how it's kind of promoted, but what they don't they show you the like 6 to 7 p.m. They don't show you the midnight to 2 a.m. They
Or the
don't
next
show
morning.
you, yeah, they don't show you the next morning, right? They don't show you, the fist fights that break out,
Yeah,
the cheating that happens, the
right.
shame that is
Yeah.
experienced, the like, oh my God, who did I text?
For me,
Um,
it was like the angry Facebook posts or comments.
oh
Like I'd go
gosh,
back
yeah,
online the next day and like, ooh, who did I piss off? And who did I,
yeah,
what did it was all about like provoking fights from people. I just wanted, I don't know what I wanted. Like, was that the connection I was looking for at the time? I don't know. It's
yeah.
just so funny now.
I'm curious, as a psychic meeting and sitting medium and sitting down with clients and doing, kind of the work that you do one on one with folks. Like, I know my perspective on this, but can you see it? Like, if somebody
Mhm.
sits with you for the first time, like, can you see the addiction? Can you
Yeah.
see, the challenge? And, if so, like, what is that? I mean, maybe you see it like in literally what does it look like, but like what is that experience like, having somebody sit across from the table and knowing that there's this energetic that's around them?
What's interesting is I don't I typically pick up on it when it's someone else in their life.
Mm-hmm.
That's really easy for me. If someone's coming to me, about their kid or their husband or whoever, especially in mediumship, I can tell when the person who has crossed over had an issue. It comes up pretty easily. And I think it's because I'm so familiar with it myself. The feelings and the emotions that go along with it. I can pick up on it a little easier. I haven't really come across any of my clients for especially like tarot who maybe are dealing with that themselves. Like that just it hasn't really either they're already in recovery or that it's just not an issue that they deal with. But yeah, in mediumship it comes up pretty often, and I try to be cognizant of how I present it, also because and I don't always think that it's alcohol related. I do recognize that there are a lot of other type of abuse patterns out there. And so I'll say like they struggled with the power dynamics of something in their life taking control. It's because it might come up to me as alcohol, but that's only because that's what I understand. But for them, it may have presented in a different way. And so I try
Mm.
to, oh yeah, well, grandma spent a lot of money or grandma, like whatever it might be. Yeah, grandpa always cheated on grandma, whatever it was. Because they do like that addiction pattern shows up in so many ways. Like we know that.
Yeah. I mean, I've there's a specific like energetic frequency that it has if somebody
Mm,
sits down with me, and I can feel it on them.
yeah.
Um, so that's why I was asking if you've ever
Yeah.
been able to feel it or witness it. Um, how, we've talked a little bit about, the addiction and stuff like that. How did your spirituality play a role in all of this? Like, you talked about, growing up in a Christian household, um, and kind of having to do, it sounds like, a little bit of deconstruction
Yeah.
there. Um, and I was raised Catholic, so I understand. But how did your spirituality play a role in either you getting sober, like making this realization, you kind of talked about that inner child work, or just like still today, like being able to celebrate 8 years.
Wow. Yeah, so I also grew up Catholic. And then later was just kind of like non-denominational Christian. And there was a lot of deconstructing for sure. I think that what's funny is I've always been more spiritual than religious. I remember I remember I remember being like 7 years old and talking to my mom about how this isn't our real body and we come from somewhere else. And like, I just knew. I've always known I was a medium. I just shoved it down for a long time. I've always had a huge interest in astrology. And so being told all of that stuff was bad for a long time, I think also played a role in me almost recognizing that there's part of me that's bad. If that's who I
Mm.
am and that's what I believe, then I must not be a good Catholic or a good Christian. And I went through a divorce in my early 30s and realized, oh, I can practice whatever I want now. I can explore this stuff a little bit easier. And so I did, and I dove headfirst into a lot of really eclectic belief systems and learning what I wanted to learn. And then, when I started to get sober, what's interesting is like I had not fully released my Christianity, I guess, at that point. Like I was still one foot in both both realms, and the idea of AA really pissed me off because they talked about
Mm.
God a lot. Like that was just not where I wanted to go because I was angry at God at that point, whatever God it was that I was picturing, and I didn't know quite where to go. One of the people that I spoke to when I first decided to get sober was a huge part of pagans in recovery in the community, and actually was the person who started it in person meetings in Atlanta. I don't know how many years ago that's been now, but I want to say something like 12, maybe more. And so that was pretty cool. And I thought, okay, pagans in recovery I can do. AA talks about God. I don't want to do that. And so a pagans in recovery meeting was my first 12-step meeting. And I remember sitting there going, "Oh my God, these people are so weird," because I am still very conservative looking outwardly, and I walked in and there's these just very eclectic people, and they were already sober. I was barely sober a couple of days, and they're just so comfortable with themselves and embrace their own like uniqueness. And so I was just kind of sitting there going, "Oh boy, what did I get myself into?" And I remember like not even getting a white chip that day because I didn't know if it was going to stick. I didn't know if this was really like I was testing the waters. But it was a place where people were speaking my language and they were really open and vulnerable about not only their addictions but their spirituality too. And I think I really needed to hear both of those at the same time because I thought I was giving up drinking, but that meant I also had to tone down my spirituality. And so being in a place where people were not only open about it, but celebratory about it changed everything for me. I do more AA meetings now just out of convenience. I'm lazy, and 20 minutes is a little too far away for me to go to a pagans and recovery meeting sometimes. But I still have a big group of friends who are like I'm still pretty not super active, but I still go to a lot of the meetings, and a few times a year I'll poke in and say hi and go to some of their events. In Atlanta, we're really lucky. We have several meetings a week that are pagans and recovery meetings. And I've gone on one of the retreats we did a few years ago. We've, like I think for my own journey, I really needed to be around these people who are just so unapologetically them, whether it was spirituality related or addiction related. that it allowed me to embrace myself too. And that was I mean, like I don't take it for granted. Like that experience in general has just been like the catalyst for me. I love it.
I love that you were able to find that. You know, I know there are handfuls of folks that still, you know, just don't have that level of
Oh,
access. And, you
so
know,
many
well,
people.
yeah. You know, how would you describe your spirituality has changed? I mean, 8 years is a long time,
Yeah.
right? You know, so
Yeah.
you walk into the room, you see all the weirdos, you're like, what the heck? You know, how has Jen changed in these last 8 years as it relates to you've got 8 years sober.
Yeah.
How about that spirituality path? How has that changed?
I used to be really afraid of being the different person in the rooms, you know, like especially being more on the AA side these days. I used to I had I had a friend who would say it's like code switching. I'd go into an AA meeting and talk about God and all of these things and leave out my own personal experience so much that it felt disconnected. And now I'm at a point where I don't really care, to be honest. Like I talk about all the weird woo-woo things in AA meetings because that's where I'm at. And I have so many people that come up to me and say, "Oh, I really needed to hear it that way." But I think like most recently, the thing that's changed for me the most, and this has been kind of like my own journey that I've shared with others, and they go, "Oh my God, me too." I felt like AA was trying to strip away the personal power that I spent so long trying to connect with. And so I've kind of done a little reconstruction of the 12 steps because I needed it. And I posted them recently on Facebook and people are like, "Wow, this really resonates." It's interesting because it's people who I know are in recovery but don't go to meetings because they feel excluded in some way. And so for me it's the higher alignment version of the 12 steps, of drinking didn't make me powerless, but it totally separated me from the higher version of myself. I still have that power if I choose to embody it, but and then like I've been working on creating somewhat of like a daily reflection type thing in accordance to these steps. And the whole month has been about like step 5 is not necessarily spilling our guts. It's not laying out our shame for people, but it's about connecting with another person and being vulnerable with them for the first time, or holding space for someone else and listening to their most vulnerable moments. And it allows me to get in touch with that higher version of myself that's not like so wrapped up in the shame, guilt, and whatever else. So that like alignment and that self power is like huge for me right now, and I'm just trying to tap into it more.
I don't know, you know, I love that you say this because I stepped into my recovery through the tables of AA, you know,
Mhm.
and tried my darndest. Like I was willing to surrender to anything to allow me to stay sober,
Right.
and tried to get a sponsor. She quit. She quit on me after 2.5 months. Like quit AA and quit her church. Right. Like so, I really did a number on her being like very open on my own spiritual beliefs. Um, and so I worked the steps throughout the rest of the year with my therapist.
Yeah.
And I remember her and I kind of talking after that first year and taking a look back. And, she kind of asked the question that they ask, like if you've ever been in, 12-step meeting, whether it's AA or NA, and somebody says, I have a year to whatever, they'll say, okay, how did you do it?
Right.
Right. That's varies. Tell us how you did it. That's the
Right.
statement. And I realized that I worked a different version of the steps that aligned to my beliefs as a witch. And so, like, I love, like, my rewrite on step 5 is to release the burden through community,
Yeah. That's
right? Like,
exactly the gist of this. Yeah.
yeah, right? Like, to no longer feel like you have to hold on to this and that you allow yourself to have connection,
Yep.
right? And the same thing,
100%.
like, the powerless, like admitting that you are powerless is not like to say that you're powerless to the alcohol, so to speak, or the drugs. Or, it's to say that you've lost your connection,
Yeah.
right? You no longer, you've lost
Right.
this connection. Yeah. So, I love that. I think that there are folks out there, I mean, because I've read the pagan 12 steps, and I still understand, and I think they're better than the traditional 12 steps, but I still think that there's a handful of us that are out here sharing these other perspectives of this work that aligns much stronger to what a true like sovereign spirituality is,
Sure. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I think a lot of it is the pagan 12 steps almost way overcorrected. It's good for people who are maybe practicing in Wicca, or, very, I don't know, it feels like super hardcore witchcraft. That's not me. Do I incorporate some sort of witchcraft? Yeah, but it's more of like self-awareness work that I work on. I do the past life regression stuff, not only for other people, but for me too, because I believe I call myself more of like a reincarnationist, I guess. Like the idea that we all come from somewhere else, we have a soul family that all works together to help teach us the lessons, and everything here that I'm experiencing is so that my soul can be a better soul later on, and help other people that way. And so I don't always do, like the morning ritual stuff, and I don't always go to different ceremonies or rituals with other people, or like I'm very much, and I don't even call myself like a solitary witch, because that's, am I a witch? Yeah, I mean, I guess, but I'm also, just a very spiritual person. And
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, I feel like the 12 steps are very Christian based, and I know people say they're not, but they are. And then you have like the pagans 12 steps, and they're very witchcraft based. But there needs to be something for the people in the middle, because we're not all one or the other. So yeah, I totally get that.
Yeah, and it's interesting. You say they're very witchcraft. I do think they lean towards the Wiccan path,
Yeah.
which is a religious function. Um, and I same thing. Like I was just like, okay, those just feel like you just took all of the 12 step and then just changed the words.
Yeah, pretty
But
much.
okay, yeah, it's I Oh, I'm curious. What do you think makes a witch? What do you think? Like, I know you're like teetering and like, are you a witch? But like, what it would even make a witch?
I don't like, I don't even know. That's the thing. I think because it's such a unique experience, like people can't dictate whether someone else is a witch or not. Um, I think a lot of people think spells and rituals, and like magic related type stuff, or uh, like the idea of ritual being very traditional and passed down, I think, is kind of like the thought process there, which to me is not totally different from Catholicism, but that's a different podcast,
Oh,
different story.
I've said it on so many podcasts, Jen, that if you never wanted me to be a witch, you should never have made me a Catholic, right?
It's
Like
come up
just
on mine
just
too. Yeah,
just
I get it.
never have made me a Catholic, right? Like my gosh, we're doing blood sacrifices every Sunday.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Hmm.
But I think it can, I don't know, like I've never really like pigeonholed myself into like one title. It's I think there are still a lot of people who do like their own coven work, or their own, okay, then they probably are a little bit more witchy than I am. I don't know. Like, does it, I don't think it really matters. I have spell jars in my house. I have
Mm.
jars and jars and jars of herbs. I have an altar. I have, there's so many things there that someone would look and go, "Oh my God, you're a witch." And I'm like, "Yeah, but I light incense because I want the kitchen to smell good, not because it's like some devotional act to, whatever. Like I'm just, maybe I'm just more of a half-assed witch. I don't know.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with being a half-ass. I'm a fan of some half-ass witchery. I'll share with you, and just because I always love repeating this, because I get asked this question often, and so I think the more times that I can share it out loud, I do believe that when we feel confident in saying the word witch, we're taking back something
Oh, for
that has
sure.
been used against women for years,
Hmm.
decades, centuries, right? So when
Yeah.
we confidently say I am a witch, right? We take that back and give them a big old middle
Yeah.
finger. But my philosophy of a witch, that's how I refer to it, is that is three things. It's the belief in the practice of the psychic arts, the belief in the practice of magic and ritual, and the belief in the practice that we're here to be of service to the world,
Okay. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so how that looks in any way, shape, or form, there is no person that gets to describe what believing and practicing in the psychic arts is, believing and practicing magic, or believing and practice in
Yeah.
service to the world. But yeah, that's my own philosophy of what makes a witch. And so most of the time when I tell people, they're like, yeah, you got me.
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Well, and that's I think like I've never had to break it down into what I think it is before. That's one thing. But also, I mean, like some days I might be a little bit more witchy than like I said, I'm a Gemini. I have so many
This
different
side of you
versions
is
of myself.
super witchy.
Yeah, like I can't even. My wardrobe is all over the place. I could fit in at a Kentucky Derby party. I can fit in at a full moon ritual. Like I'm all over the place. And so yeah, some days I am more witchy than others. Some days it's I'm just a person. Like I'm not, I don't know. I'm just like Geminis are just so chameleon like. I fit in everywhere.
We've talked a little bit about this, but just as someone that has this kind of like plethora of a background. And I think that people that work with the public have a much different perspective, right? So you work with the public, and you do a lot of, service work from that perspective. But why do you think those of us that do have these more esoteric or these other like spiritual beliefs, why do we feel so weird walking into those rooms of like AA? Like, what is it about that? Like, even if you were to look back at from your perspective, like, why was it? Why do you feel so strange? Was it? I'm just gonna leave it at that. Like, why does it feel so uncomfortable when you're trying to truly just heal?
I think there is a very new revelation that I've experienced that explains this. I just was it last weekend or the weekend before did a cacao ceremony for the first time, which was a really beautiful experience. But what I learned from it is that like I've hidden from my own power so much because of how powerful I am. When walking into a room of people who are completely oblivious to their own power, but let alone like all of the ways their life can change if they tap into it, it doesn't fit right. Like it just feels out of place. And
Mm.
now I'm like literally just since that ceremony, I've been showing up a little bit different in the world around me. And I'm realizing like if I don't embrace all of my power, no one else will. But also when embrace all of my power, it gives people permission to embrace all of theirs. And that's I think I've always known that and I've always practiced that, but I wasn't living it. Like if I show up and I'm the woo woo spiritual lady, okay, well, yeah, sure, people start to recognize that in themselves, but I was still playing myself down. And I think early in recovery, it was way more uncomfortable because it was like I already knew all of the power that I had. And I don't mean like power like I can influence the moon and I can, like, yeah, that's beside the point, but like the light that I can be for other people is so powerful. I reflect back everything to them. It's it's uncomfortable for me and them if no one's aware of it and actively participating in it. If someone comes to me for that work, sure, I'm on. I can do it. But if I have to fit into the rooms like other spaces, it's so hard.
Yeah.
So hard.
You make me think about, and I've shared this with handfuls of folks, and I think even a little bit of another perspective of that story, kind of that you're sharing and with this cacao ceremony of, like cacao is a heart opener. Like it
Mhm.
truly is going to show us like really like where we've been denying ourselves
Right.
or, and so many of us, I'll say witches in recovery are so highly sensitive, so gifted in the psychic arts.
Yeah.
Many of us have used drugs and alcohol or addictive behaviors to numb and avoid these
Oh, for
gifts.
sure.
That the moment you walk into a room, I don't care what that room is, but you're sober, right? Let's say
Yeah.
you're sober and you're newly sober.
Right.
You can now pick up every fucking person in there that's
100%.
performing, hiding,
Yeah.
pretending, and that's telling you, "Oh, I've got 25 years." And you're like, "Yeah, but you're still an asshole to your wife."
Right.
Right?
Yeah. 100%.
And so to me, this is and I will never ever the tables of AA got me well beyond 90 days. Okay. I'm never going to knock the fact that they are helping a lot of individuals. But for those of us that are highly sensitive, like I had
Hard.
deconstructed all my Christian
Mhm.
bullshit. Like I was able to sit into these rooms. I had been working on some of my hypersensitivity within my
Mhm.
gifts. But if I had not, to
It's
sit there and to feel the lies that are
yeah.
still being told,
Yeah.
right, to themselves,
Yeah.
not would have been really hard and uncomfortable, and I'd have been doing it completely. I've been raw dogging it, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
I just yeah I love that. So
And it's interesting because over the years I've become very selective in the meetings I go to. There's a lot of clubhouses that I refuse to go to meetings at because they do attract people who are there for getting their sheet signed and they're in and out. And I've gone to one in particular. I would think I was picking up my maybe 90-day chip, and someone made a vulgar comment about my outfit I was wearing, and like yeah, like you said, you pick up on all of that energy, and I just had to not go back. I've gone back to hear someone who was telling their story, like one of my friends was sharing their story, and same thing happened. Like it's like I walk in, I'm a magnet for all the people who want to feel better but aren't doing the work.
yep.
And so I have had to become very selective. I don't sponsor. And I know
Mm.
like a lot of people in AA are like, you have to sponsor. I have one sponsee, but she is doing amazing work. Like it's not the constant we're checking in on each other. She has her group of sober sisters that she relies heavily on, and we talk and when needed. But I don't actively sponsor a lot of people just because newly sober people are in an energetic mess,
Hmm.
and I do have to kind of protect my own sanity at a certain point.
I think the community is more powerful than an individual at that particular point.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
100%. I've
No,
tried to sponsor, and it it just drains me. And I
yeah.
hate to be that selfish person that's like, "Oh, but I'm supposed to be doing this and I just don't want to because it's uncomfortable." But what good am I if I'm drained for myself and everyone else around me? Like that's just not my power power
Yeah. No,
moment.
no,
Like,
I've had somebody recently ask if I do sponsor on any of the content and stuff that I've written about and all this kind of jazz, and I'm like, I don't really, do. I mean, even in our programming, or within the Sovereign Phoenix itself, we have a path of like initiation to go towards, which I refer to as the Recovery God Witch, and that is an individual that can provide like experience, right?
yeah.
But the reality is, part of what we are trying to teach within the Sovereign Phoenix and the Recovery Coven, it is your responsibility to remain sober. And so to
100%.
me, like a sponsor is still feels like an scapegoat, right? Oh, I was going to drink and my sponsor didn't, answer the
Right.
phone. Oh, wanted to you. Oh, I this or like, to your point, the draining, and it's like, what are you what did you do? What steps did you take before you even tried to call,
Right. I
right?
also have heard people who have had a lot of sobriety, oops, who have said, "Oh, in the first year of recovery, I ran all of my decisions past my sponsor." And I'm like, "But why? Like they're just human. They are not like they're not this almighty knower of everything. And I have to learn how to make decisions on my
Yeah.
own at some point."
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if it was that I don't know. I just try to figure out, is it because they're the disease was so much worse for them, or was I just very stubborn, or and then I'm like, no, it's because I actually wanted to be as self-sufficient as possible so that I didn't rely on someone else. I'm not replacing the alcohol with a sponsor, you know.
I think there's a difference too because you, my guess, had a connection with the divine. When you needed guidance or advice,
Yeah.
you leaned in, I would imagine, to the connection to the
Yeah.
divine. Yeah. So that to me, I've told people, Jen, that if I ever second guessed my own psychic abilities, my own intuition, my own connection to spirit, that would mean that I was a step closer to a relapse. I don't have that. That it's just not a luxury.
I just
Like,
got chills. I love that. Yeah.
yeah.
No, that makes so
Um,
much sense. And I'd never really considered it that way. I think it does go back to like that personal power. And for me, maybe that intuition is very much, it is my personal power. And being so separated from it at one point in time meant that like I didn't trust myself.
yeah.
I didn't know, I wasn't, I wasn't reliable for me. And I have needed to get back to a place where I know I can depend on myself. And that's been the whole process for me.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy.
If
I
you go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm just like, whoa, okay.
No, this is why within the Recovery Coven, I lead 2 workshops every single month to develop psychic intuition.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, because if like literally, like this to me is going to be the thing at some point that saves someone, right? Like
Yeah.
sure, if you want to sponsor, if you want to be in an AA program and work around with our stuff too, that's amazing and great. I don't have any issues with that, right? Be your own sovereign badass. Um, but if you're not also developing and strengthening out your own connection
Right.
directly to the divine, yeah. Um, if you were to, somebody were to come across your path right now, remember how, like you said, you knew you were at your wit's end, you just didn't like yourself anymore, and you contacted some folks, like, what do I do? I don't want to drink. What would you, if somebody came to you right now and said that, what's your advice to them?
I don't feel like I'm very helpful because I mean, like, okay, don't. Um, I think like the first step is really I had to look at why I was fed up with myself. Like, what? Hold on, how do I word this? I'm always about like, what do I want to improve? And so what needs to go? And that's, I think, essentially what I did at that moment was, where do you want to be? Like, what version of yourself do you want to fully embrace? And then how do you get there? And I tell a lot of my clients, if you have these goals and manifestation type things that you want to get to, what is the path that you can track back to where you are now to get you to that place? Because how do we know where we're going if we don't have a map? And for me at the time, it was like, well, what is keeping me from reaching these goals? I had the desire to be self-employed and doing readings for people. And I had already started school to become a hypnotherapist, but I wasn't doing the work to finish those goals. And it was because my drinking was getting in the way of it. Okay, well, the most obvious thing is to take the drinking out of the picture And I don't think I realized like how much of an alcoholic I was, or like how dependent I was on the alcohol at that time. For me, it was just, okay, well, I won't drink anymore. And then I started to kind of freak out because what do you mean I can't drink anymore? And that's when I started to really investigate my own relationship with alcohol. So, okay, know what you want, know where you want to be, and what's standing in between you and that place, because that's what you need to work on. Like that's where the work is.
Hmm,
And
I
it's
love it.
frustrating. People don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear it. I still want to try to find the easy way to circumvent all of that work, but there's no way.
The frustrating one that I love to tell people is when they ask me what's the meaning of life, they're trying to like pull your leg, and I always say to live it.
Ah, yeah.
they're,
Yeah.
they're like, what? No, I'm like,
100%.
well, Jen, why don't you let our listeners know? I know we'll have in the description all of your websites and all of your handles and everything like that, but just let people know, like, if they wanted to reach out to you, why should they do that? Where can they find you? All that kind of good stuff.
I don't know. I think I'm a pretty cool person these days. I post a lot on Facebook. Like, find me there. I've made a lot of friends through social media. If you want to work with me one on one through tarot card readings or mediumship, past life regression, I think I bring a lot of my own journey into my work, and I help people to recognize their own power, but also get in touch with who they are, soulful existence. Like the whole meaning of my business name is because we are souls in full. Like we just need to get in touch with it, and that's what I do. That's I mean that's behind all the astrology work I've done and everything else. Like who am I is always the motivator behind that. So yeah, I hope someone will reach out if they need it. That'd be awesome.
Well, I always like to let folks know, like, if you're thinking about it right now, please know that Spirit's way of tapping you on the shoulder and telling you would be very wise to do so. So please,
Well, and
uh,
even if it's not working with me, just follow me. Like I
yeah, yeah.
think, I love making new friends online. So
Awesome. Well, Jen, this has been amazing and lovely and incredible. So thank you so much for being here today and sharing
thank
all your
you. I had
lovely
so much
experience.
fun.
Yeah, it's been incredible. And folks that are listening, as always, come on back. We're gonna have, I don't know who the guest is next week. I'll know when I sit down and prep that, right? Like, why would I know what I'm gonna do a week from now when I'm still not done with today? Uh, so that being said, everyone, I hope all of y'all have a very beautiful rest of your day, week, or whenever. And much love from all of us, from me and Jen here to all of you. Until next time.